Hi, everybody. It's Nathaniel Avila reporting from Dallas County. I'm here with Timbrel Hildebrand from. Are you in Crowley right now?
I am in Crowley right
All
now.
right, great. Crowley right now, Texas. So how is everything going?
Everything's going great.
Great. So we did have to take a little bit of a break because we need to like finish classes and stuff. Because that's student life. Am I right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Did you make any short films?
I made one. I had this directing class, so I got to make a short for that. They kind of encouraged us to do it virtually, but my actors were comfortable with doing it in person, so we did it in person, so that was
All right.
nice.
Did you? What's it about?
It was this scene. It wasn't a great scene, but it was just kind of supposed to, it was like 2 minutes long. It was two people talking. It was just supposed to assess my directing abilities,
All
but
right.
it was just two friends talking to each other about a drinking problem one of them had, that sort
Okay.
of thing.
Did you have to do a scene from a film that already exists, like I did?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh,
They
okay.
gave us like scenes from a book, which, as you know, are not great.
Okay. Because I had to do that same thing too, but it was I had to choose. I had to do. Well, I chose to do the kitchen scene from Hannah and Her Sisters by Woody Allen. So
Oh,
that's what I
cool.
did. Yeah. So maybe I can link to that in the video. So, what are we talking about today?
The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the
The
Wardrobe.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I remember when I used to watch this film a lot. It was my favorite film when it came out.
I did too when I was younger.
Yeah. Before that, I watched the straight to television BBC adaptation
Yeesh.
that looked like a.
Those are those
Yeah,
are rough.
it looked like a stage play, that kind of thing. And I remember my. It came out when I was in fourth grade. It came out in. When did it come out? 2005. I was in fourth grade when it happened, and I
I
had
thought
a.
it came out in 2004.
Did it come out in 2004?
I think it was 2004.
It says here 2005.
That's odd. I could have sworn it was
Oh
2004.
snap! That's a Mandela effect. So yeah, so it came out when I was in fourth grade, and I remember I had a teacher who was a huge C.S. Lewis fan, and I remember he would read the Chronicles of Narnia to us in class when we weren't doing nothing, and when the film came out, he was like, "We're taking a field trip to see The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe," and I was like, "Let's do it." So that's what we did. I watched the film for the first time on a school field trip.
That's fun.
Yeah. So, and ever since then, it was like my favorite scene. I mean, not my favorite scene, my favorite film for a good chunk of time. So,
Wow.
yeah. When did you first see it?
I think I saw it around the same time they came out because I remember being about 5 years old or so, and I remember really liking it. I didn't realize like it was based off of books and stuff like that, but I remember really liking it because it was like fantasy, and that was really fun.
Mm-hmm. You a big fantasy person?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And like the fun thing is that C.S. Lewis, I believe he grew up in a pretty like anti-religion type household, and he grew up pretty atheistic until he met another guy by the name of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he was one of his friends that like one of his friends that converted him to Christianity or something like that.
that is right. And ever since then, C.S. Lewis became very diehard Christian, and he put a lot of biblical elements within the Chronicles of Narnia, and they are pretty evident within like the film adaptation as well. He also became a huge theologist. He wrote a couple of
Theologian.
theologian. He became a huge. Wrote some uh, theologian books as well, um, which are pretty interesting, and it's a good read if you're interested in that. So let's do a little background about the film adaptation. So we're gonna go back all the way back into the 1990s, the early 1990s, where producer Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy of Star Wars fame were planning a film version of the Chronicles of Narnia. but they could not find a space in Britain to shoot the film during 1996. And their plans was to set the film in modern times. Now,
Ugh, that would
yeah,
have been terrible.
I know. So this made Douglas Gresham, who was C.S. Lewis's stepson, oppose the film, and he did not like that idea, and I don't blame him. So, in addition to his feeling that technology had not yet caught up to telling the story, so this other guy named Perry Moore began negotiations with the C.S. Lewis estate in 2000, and on December 7th, 2001, Walden Media announced that they had acquired the rights to the Chronicles of Narnia. So after the success of Harry Potter, which prompted the producers to feel that they could make a faithful adaptation of the novel set in Britain, and this is what Mark Johnson said. So Harry Potter came along, and all these cultural or geographical lines were broken. So when The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was being developed at Paramount, the imperative was to set it in America. And it...
No!
Yeah, and he said it just doesn't hold. Yeah, no
No,
kidding.
you can't put the Chronicles of Narnia in America?
Yeah, I know.
Are they crazy?
Yeah, I know. And he says, like, it's just not in the book, and he was right. So Guillermo del Toro turned down the offer to direct this film due to his commitment on Pan's Labyrinth. So following an Oscar win for Shrek, the director Andrew Adamson, who directed Shrek, began adapting the source material with a 20-page treatment based on his memories of the book. So, as such, the film begins with the Luftwaffe bombing and concludes with an enormous battle, although they did not take much time in the novel. In the novel, the battle is not seen until Aslan, Susan, Lucy, and the reinforcement arrive. So this was changed in the movie because Adamson said he could vividly remember a huge battle, an example of how Lewis left a lot to the reader's imagination. So other small changes include the reason for all four children to come to Narnia, and that the accident breaks a window and forces them to hide. Tumnus also never meets Edmund until the end in the novel. Minor details were added to the Pevensleys, such as their mother's name, Helen, being the actual first name of George Henley's mother, and Finchley as the home of the Pevensleys was inspired by Anna Popplewell, who actually is from Finchley. So Adamson, who changed the circumstances in with Lucy, which Lucy first comes to Narnia, he felt it was more natural that she see the wardrobe while looking for a hide and seek hiding place, rather than just chance upon it in exploring the house. The film also hints that Professor Kirk's role in The Magician's Nephew, such as engravings on the wardrobe, when it is a simple one in the novel, and the professor's surprise and intrigue when Peter and Susan mention Lucy's discovery in the wardrobe. When Lewis wrote the novel, it was the first in the series, and the backstory later outlined by subsequent books in the series, which did not exist yet. So additionally, in the novel, the father of the Pevensey children was in London with their mother, but in the film, their father is fighting in the war, as Lucy states to Tumnus when they first met in Narnia. Now, Weta Workshop, who did all the production design and stuff, had Richard Taylor cited Hieronymus Bosch's The Garden of Earthly Delights as an inspiration of the film. He felt Narnia had to be less dark and gritty in their depiction of their depiction of Middle Earth in The Lord of the Rings, because it is a new world. So many of Weta's creature designs were designed for digital creation, so when Howard Berger and KNBFX inherited the practical effects work, they had to spend 3 months retooling approved designs for animatronics. Berger's children would comment and advise upon his designs. They suggested that the White Witch's hair be changed from black to blonde, which Berger concurred with as he realized Swinton's wig looked too gothic, thus ending the story of the backstory of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe 2005 adaptation. So yeah, like, those are some ideas that they had.
Yeah, because I did not know a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, imagine Chronicles of Narnia set in today times.
No, that would have been awful.
Mm-hmm. That would have made a lot of people upset.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about the main protagonists. Well, the main characters, I should say, which is the Pevensey's children, named Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. What do we think?
Oh yeah, this movie. It's interesting because I had not read the books when I first watched the movie. I just thought it was a movie. You know, I was a kid, so I wasn't going to read the Chronicles of Narnia. But after I watched the movies, I went back and I read the books, and I've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe a couple of times. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, read it. It's beautiful writing. It's just a great story. And what I love about these movies is that, and I think it's a shame because I think the Chronicles of Narnia definitely could have done what Harry Potter did, where they like released a movie every year and they just let the kids grow up with every book, and gone back and done some of the other movies, like you mentioned the book The Magician's Nephew, which is like a prequel kind of, as well as The Horse and His Boy, because Lewis went back and wrote those after he wrote, I believe he wrote Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, Dawn Treader, Silverchair, then went back and wrote The Magician's Nephew and The Horse and His Boy, and then wrote The Last Battle. So it's a very interesting timeline. What I love about these movies is that even in this first movie, they really encapsulate who all these characters become throughout the rest of the series, just in the first movie. Which isn't necessarily evident in the first book, but I love that because it's respecting all of the source material as a whole, and I love it. And this movie is particularly faithful to the book, so I really like that. But the character probably, I'm kind of trailing off here, but in regard to the characters, I think they're perfect. They get them down to a pat, they delve into the intricacies that you don't necessarily get to see in just the first book. Like, particularly with Susan's character, because if you know the story, Susan eventually ends up, like, she represents the doubter in the allegory that Lewis was portraying in his novels, and Susan forgets about Narnia in the future and stops believing in Narnia. So it's interesting that even in this first movie, they're sowing those seeds of doubt with her character, with her always doubting what's happening, trying to figure out a logical explanation, not trusting, what's going on. So that was particularly cool to me. The girl who plays Lucy is Georgia Henley, I think. She's wonderful, and I think she perfectly encapsulates that childlike faith that Lucy was supposed to reflect in the movie. Edmund's great too. It's so funny. I really haven't seen these actors in anything else. I think the only one that really has been in anything of noteworthy mention was Susan, the girl who plays Susan.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, they're really good. I think they perfectly encapsulate exactly what they're supposed to be. They're believable as siblings. Yeah, but the characters are great because they're all so different. You have Lucy, who is super, faithful. She believes. She's not afraid to trust. You have Edmund, who's out for himself and has to grow past that. The betrayer, the Judas, if you will. And you have Susan, who's the doubtful one, and then you have Peter, who's the oldest, so he's the leader. He's always looking out for his family. So it really creates a really interesting dynamic, I think, in the story.
Right. So I just am looking up what the actors are doing right now. I know that Anna Popplewell, who's the person who played Susan, she ended up playing Lola in the show Rain, which is what her next film was. William Moseley, who plays Peter, he ended up being in another show called The Royals, which is on E. So I can sense they're sticking with the whole medieval timeline thing. Georgie Henley, it says here she's still an actress, but I don't know what else she's been doing. And as for Skander Keynes, who plays Edmund,
He's done nothing.
Yeah, because he quit acting after this.
Bummer.
Yeah, he quit acting and he went into politics. And
really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, so he's now a political advisor in England.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I just learned that right now. So there was a show on Disney Plus called I think it's called Prop Culture. Have you ever watched that show?
Nope.
Well, there was an episode completely dedicated to the Chronicles of Narnia, and where they just look at a bunch of like old like props and costumes from it, and they invited William, Anna Popplewell, and Georgie Henley to look over like the old props and stuff. And the only one who didn't show up was Skander Keynes, and I guess that's why.
That's funny.
So now that since we're on the subject of Skander Keynes, who played Edmund, what do we think about Edmund? He is basically the traitor in this film.
It's really interesting. I really loved the way I mean, obviously, as a Christian, the gospel is a story that's near and dear to my heart. It's the most important truth in the world, and I love that the way that Lewis weaves it into his story is just, it's so beautiful and moving, and it's really interesting because obviously Aslan is representative of the Christ, of Jesus, and Edmund represents the traitor, who, I guess Judas, who betrays his family, or really just represents people in general, because we fall short and we betray the people we love and we look out for ourselves and instead of others. And I think it's really interesting to watch Edmund grow, because at the beginning he's just this real punk, selfish, mean kid, and by the end he's, taking a dagger for his brother, that sort of thing. So I think it's really cool to watch him grow throughout the movie. And I also, in the further films that followed, I thought it was really cool to get to see him grow in those as well.
Right. He appears in Prince Caspian and in Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
He does.
Okay. Yeah, so another, like, my favorite character in this film would have to be Santa Claus. This is my
Father
favorite character.
Christmas?
Yeah. So that's technically a Christmas movie. Because Santa Claus is in it, so that's why we're doing this like a couple days after Christmas. Merry Christmas!
Right, totally.
So so Edmund has the biggest arc in the entire film, and I know that also Susan's arc is that she goes from believer to non-believer, but we don't see that until the later films. I'm gonna go into a little like the studio background type thing, because I know that it was originally supposed to be like a Disney film, which is why we're doing it on this Disney podcast. It was going to do... This one was a Disney film, and then Prince Caspian was done also by Disney. But Prince Caspian was not as successful as The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And because of that, I guess Disney said we're done with it, and they gave it to 20th Century Fox, who then made Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and I guess that one didn't go as well either. So then they're like, okay, I guess we're done with it. And I heard that Netflix is gonna make a show about it soon.
Oh, goody.
Yes. But, I mean, that way we get to see the entirety of the entire book series, hopefully.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, they did do, what was it? Series of Unfortunate Events, pretty good. I like that show.
Well, I never watched it.
Oh, check it out. It's really good. It's a dark comedy, but it's pretty good. Also, like the ending is definitely like near the ending. It is my favorite scene. I remember for the longest time. It was the epic battle scene at the end, and that was like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my child life. What did you think about that film? I mean, that scene.
Oh man, no, I love the battle scene. And I know that it doesn't go into as much detail in the book because it's focusing more on the allegorical part, like where Aslan rises from the dead, and then him and Lucy and Susan go free all the creatures. But I think the battle scene is a lot of fun. It feels very reminiscent of like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, which I think is really cool. Interesting fact, this film, they shot it in New Zealand, the same place as where Lord of the Rings was set. But I think that's cool because it's almost like, Tolkien and Lewis were buddies, so it seems cool that they're their two worlds ended up being shot in the same place. But I love the battle scenes. I think it's necessary for the movie. Perhaps some things work better on screen than they do in the books, and since Lewis left a lot up for kind of like imagination, like you said, it kind of gives the filmmakers room to play. And I enjoy it because it really adds to Peter's character, because Peter is kind of like this sudden duty is thrust upon him to lead the Narnians into battle against the White Witch and her minions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really cool because you see this boy, this literal child, on the front lines trying to command everyone like a king and going off against the White Witch and trying to fight. And it's really cool to watch that. And again, you see Edmund's arc too. I think it provides a nice action, a nice juxtaposition to the more to the other story that's going on with Susan and Lucy and Aslan as they're going to rescue everybody. It adds tension to where there's it keeps the viewer invested. So I like that. Right.
And I remember one of the things that I got was when this film came out, I bought a special edition, silver edition box set of this one film.
I think I have that, or I had it at one point.
Oh, do you think you had it?
Yeah, it was real thick. Yeah. It had the extended edition on it and a bunch of special features, right?
Right, and it had a documentary on it too.
I had that.
Oh, snap. So, if you watch the extended version, it has the battle sequence has more scenes in it. It is longer in that version. So I was like, that's what I want. That's what I wanted to see. So one of the things that I really liked about the Chronicles of Narnia is the idea of a fantasy world where no humans exist, and it's filled with a bunch of different creatures from various mythologies and folklores. And I thought that was super duper cool. But then Prince Caspian came out, and then they were like, oh, there's humans in Narnia now. And that kind of made me a little sad.
What's that?
It kind of made me a little sad.
Oh, what did?
The fact that, in Prince Caspian, they were like, oh, we have humans living in Narnia now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a commonplace now, and I think that kind of ruined the fantasy for me a little bit. But I also liked the idea of talking animals, that kind of thing. And
yeah.
So, this any other things you want to talk about in terms of this film? Oh yeah, the 100-year the long winter. What do you think that represents?
I never even thought about that. I think it kind of represents sort of if we're sticking to the allegory, it's it's a time before Christ came to give people liberation from their sins. So I like the imagery of this winter and always winter but never Christmas. It's just it's very I don't even know how to explain it. It's just it just has this charm to it that feels it doesn't quite fit in our world, but it also is reminiscent of our world. Narnia is. It's just there's so much to talk about when it comes to this movie. And I love the way they visualized it in the movie with all the snow and stuff like that. And as they slowly moved forward, there was less snow, and it's just I love that imagery of things melting away, giving birth to new life. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. So, what do we think about the symbolism of the White Witch? Do you think she represents Satan, evil in general, human desire, or what do we think about that?
I mean, I always thought she represented Satan, but I mean, I think she probably represents a myriad of things, and people have probably written, dissertations over this, but it always kind of struck me that she seemed to symbolize Satan just because, she was looking for the soft spots in, every single person and was using it against them to further her plan against Aslan, i.e. kind of God, the Christ figure.
Mm-hmm.
And man, Tilda Swinton, she's just phenomenal in this role. She was just great. I love her as the White Witch. She's terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Right.
And yeah, she's just so kind of like delightfully evil. And it's interesting. I think that's why they brought her back in the next couple of movies, because to the best of my recollection, I think she might have had a reappearance in the book in Prince Caspian, but she definitely did not have a reappearance in the Dawn Treader. But I mean, if you have someone like Tilda Swinton, when she does it so well, I mean, I don't blame them for bringing her back for little cameos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is what she represents. I think she represents Satan, just kind of like, that urge that all humans have to sin and turn their backs on the people they love, turn their backs on God, that sort of thing. She's an excellent villain, to be certain, just because she's so evil, unapologetically evil and devious. And she's played by a phenomenal actress. I really liked her costume design as well. It was very different from the novel, but I think they sort of made it their own, and I liked that, how they kind of gave her like the ice crown and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I think in the reappearances in the film adaptations, the White Witch just really comes back as like haunting. Like, I think she mostly appears to Edmund as like constantly like taunting him about his failure in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when he betrayed his family for Turkish Delight. And so she's constantly like taunting him about that one time, and using that as leverage to like say like, oh, you can't do whatever, and stuff like that. So she could also represent guilt. You can argue, in those two films. So also, like, I remember when, are you familiar with the leather-bound collection books that Barnes & Noble sells?
No, I'm not. That sounds real cool.
Yeah, like, Barnes & Noble's has an exclusive line of leather-bound books, like a bunch of classic books and nonfiction stuff. Like, I have a leather-bound version of the Bible, and it's really big. It's like it's the King James version, but it's huge. And they also have some with like the Constitution on there too, as well as like a bunch of collection of various authors. They have one from Jules Verne, H.P. Lovecraft. They have like a novelization of Star Wars in there too, and a couple of novelizations of they have some novelizations of some Star Trek episodes in there too, and The Wizard of Oz, and a whole lot of bunch of classic literature. And one of the things that they had, like, when they very, very first started out, was the entire collection of the Chronicles of Narnia, all 7 books in one leather-bound book. So they were all in one book, and with with illustrations and all. And I remember when I first got into like collecting those particular books, that was the one I kind of wanted the most. But for some reason, they discontinued that book.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, they discontinued that particular book, for some reason or another. And I found it on like eBay and secondhand seller websites, but they were going for like $200, $300, $500. And the retail price was like $25. But
wow.
I managed to find one for only $100, and I was like, what? And now I have it. So I'm pretty proud of that one.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, did you ever have to like study these books in school?
No, I never studied these books in school. I read these books because I wanted to read them, because like I loved the movies, so I wanted to read the books. And the books are, I'd say that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe definitely does the best job of being just true to the book content and plot-wise. But I would say that all the movies are true to the books spirit-wise, because what's interesting, what I've definitely like the most about these movies, not just this first one, but particularly this first one, is that they didn't diminish the allegorical nature of the source material, because the source material was quite shamelessly proclaiming the gospel in an allegorical form. And, when it gets into Hollywood and stuff like that, usually that kind of stuff is lost. And I really like the fact that that spirit that pointed to the greatest story ever told, still remained in the movie. And the results speak for itself. You get an amazing story that's rich with truth and love and all that stuff. And that's what I love the most.
Oh, that's
about
really awesome.
These movies.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I do like that they kept that aspect of the novels when adapting into film. So, when they do make another adaptation on Netflix, do you think should they adapt a horse and his boy?
I mean, the thing is, I feel again, like I said before, I feel like these movies had a lot of potentially, especially since this first movie was so good. But the problem is, they lost momentum because they didn't release Prince Caspian right away. It was about 3 years before Prince Caspian came out.
Mm-hmm.
The kids had gotten older, which is fine, but they had gotten significantly older. It had clearly been much longer than a year when the second movie came out. And so that lost their momentum, so the kids were getting too old, and then the next one didn't come out for another couple of years. So, and then by that point, people had lost interest, and it kind of it kind of deflated, which kind of sucks, because these movies and these stories are... I don't know if they should adapt The Horse and His Boy. I don't remember The Horse and His Boy very well. I will say that if they were ever to release it, they'd have to tell it in the order that the books were released, not in the order that they're numbered, per se.
Right. I just looked up... Yeah? I just looked up Chronicles
No,
of...
never mind.
I just looked up Chronicles of Narnia, The Silver Chair, film adaptation, and apparently it looks like I found a fan poster of it, and it looks like they want Saoirse Ronan to play Jill.
Oh, I can watch that.
Yeah, with that other dude who playing what's his face? Eustace, yeah. I forget that guy's name.
Yeah.
That guy with the punchable face. I'm kidding. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm kidding. I'm sure he's a great guy in real life. Yeah. But yeah. So you say release order, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing about A Horse and His Boy, a lot of people say to just skip it because it doesn't really have a lot of impact in the rest of the story, the rest of the narrative.
Yeah.
Because it's when you read it, it sounds a lot like a filler book.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've read it. I'd probably need to read it again before I made an assessment.
Yeah, I need to read it again too, because it's been a hot minute. I haven't read it in 10 years. So, yeah, that was the Chronicles of Narnia. Any final thoughts you have about it?
We have not even talked about Aslan or
snap. That's right.
Mr. Tumnus or anything, or the beavers or anything.
Oh, snap, I completely forgot. Aslan.
Those are huge characters, dude.
Yeah, you're right. Aslan, Liam Aslanson. What do we think about him?
Oh man, Liam Neeson was great. Perfect choice to voice it. He just has a great voice. And it's interesting because usually I don't like movies where the animals can talk, but in this movie, it's definitely an exception. I love Aslan. I think they did him perfectly, using the lion imagery to represent God and that sort of thing. Where he's terribly dangerous, but he's also gentle. I love the line at the very end of the movie where Tumnus is talking to Lucy, and he says he's not a tame lion, actually probably one of the lines that I wish they hadn't cut from the book that wasn't in the movie.
Was that the line?
When time they tell them about a man, they go, "Oh no, he's not a man, he's a lion." And Susan goes, "Oh dear, is he safe?" And they go, "No, he's not safe, but he's good." And I really wish they hadn't cut out that line. That was such a perfect way to encapsulate like the relationship between people and God. But I still think, like, again, like when it comes to like the spirit of the books, like it's so well done. You know, I know that CGI has kind of like become pretty commonplace. Probably nowadays, you know, the CGI doesn't look quite as good as what they can do now, but Aslan still looks great. And I just think, yeah, I love the way they depict him in this, particularly the scene where the White Witch kills him. It's heartbreaking to watch.
Mm-hmm.
How he just lets them cut off his hair and then kill him. Oh, it's heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, and then the stone table cracks or something.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then he resurrects. And then
yeah, it was really cool. Now I gotta go watch that movie again. That movie's just so good.
Yeah. So like there was something else I wanted to talk about with Aslan. I think Netflix is also making a film just specifically about Aslan. And it's just called Aslan. Oh yeah, I remember now. Like in the end of Voyage of the Dawn Treader, I believe Aslan came to the children in the form of a lamb before turning back into a lion.
No, that didn't happen, I don't think.
It's been a while. Maybe I'm mixing my metaphors. But,
yeah.
Alright, so, like, James McAvoy as Tumnus, the fawn.
Oh, man, he's great.
Do you like his performance?
I mean, to say that he's great is kind of like just a given. James McAvoy is such a great actor. But yeah, his work as Tumnus was wonderful. And that was kind of before James McAvoy was a huge name. I mean, he'd been in stuff. I'm guessing he'd done Wanted and stuff like that. But yeah, he's great. He tugs at your heart. I mean, Mr. Tumnus is not a huge character in the book, but you can tell just from reading the book how much he means to Lucy. And just that first interaction where, like, he breaks down feeling so guilty as to have tried to kidnap her, and you see his fear at the White Witch. It's just, they do a great job of making you care about him right away and raising the stakes. And I enjoyed the fact that they added that scene with him and Edmund interacting in the prison, because that just made you love him even more.
Mm-hmm. Like, I remember, I think Tumnus is considered to be like the cornerstone of the entire Chronicles of Narnia. Because I believe C.S. Lewis said that he came up with the entire idea of the Chronicles of Narnia from a dream he had, where a fawn was carrying some packages across a snowy woodland area, and there was a lamppost, and that's where he pretty much came up with the idea of the Chronicles of Narnia in the first place, from that one piece of imagery, which became the most iconic piece of imagery within the entire novel series. Am I right?
I have never heard that, but I do love that imagery of the lamppost. It's just so delightfully random and yet like such a compelling piece of imagery. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I remember there was when I was living in Louisville, in a townhome in Louisville, there was like this little park area where it was like mostly like little woods and stuff on a hill, like little trees and stuff on a hill, and in the middle of that was just one lamppost. And I remember like thinking that like reminded me so much of the Chronicles of Narnia, because it was just this single lamppost in this little tiny field with a couple of trees around. And I remember like whenever it would snow here, back when it used to snow yearly, whenever it would snow, it would remind me exactly of that scene. And I wish I had like a camera phone or something at that point in time to take a picture of it, but I no longer do. I don't know if it's still there or not. But yeah, that was one of the memories that I have. It just reminded me of that.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So the Beavers, the Ray Winstone, Don French Beavers. Who are they supposed to be?
What?
Ray Winstone played Mr. Beaver, and Don French played Mrs. Beaver. Those
Oh.
are the actors. So, what do you think they're supposed to be?
Um, I enjoy them. They're kind of like the children's guides, and then they're funny and sweet. I think one of my favorite moments is when they suddenly find out that the beaver can talk and they freak out. It's real funny. It's delightful.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love them. I love those characters because they're just so kind, to the children. They care for them and lead them to Aslan, which is pretty cool. I just feel like they deserve a shout out because they're really cool. I love them.
Yeah. And then Santa comes in, and he's like,
Oh yeah, your favorite character? Question mark.
yeah, he's my favorite character, Santa Claus, who comes in and gives them weapons. That's what I like.
He does come in and give them weapons.
Yeah, he gives Peter a sword and
What kids really want for Christmas are medieval weapons.
Exactly, man. And he's all like, "Here's some weapons." Yeah. So that any other character you would like to talk about?
I mean, I think it was another thing that I thought was really cool that you mentioned earlier was the professor. How they clearly hinted to the fact that he was one of the characters from the book Magician's Nephew. I absolutely adored that because again, like what I love about this movie is they made it in such a way that it fit perfectly into the world that already existed around it. Like they made it fit in a way where it respected all the source material, and I loved that so much. One of my favorite moments is at the end of the movie when they all tumble out of the wardrobe and he goes, "What were you all doing in the wardrobe?" And they go, "You'd never believe us." And he says, "Try me." And I'm like, oh yes, that's just full circle. Because it's so funny because probably to most viewers that didn't make much sense. That he was just so willing to believe what they were saying and stuff like that. But to people who did know the story, they're like, "Oh, that makes so much sense. That's Diggory."
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely loved him. I loved how he, was basically telling them the logic of like what Lucy was saying. I love when they're talking, when Peter and Susan are talking to him, and they're trying to explain how we think Lucy's making it all up, and he says, and they say, "Edmund said they were just pretending." He goes, "Oh, and he's the more truthful one, isn't he?" And they're like, "Well, this would be the first time." And he says, "Well, if she's not mad and she's not lying, then logically she must be telling the truth."
And then he's like, "She's telling the truth, you dumb kids."
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else. Can you imagine being a fully grown adult for how many amount of years and then instantly being thrust back into your little kid body?
Oh, it's heartbreaking because they lived a full life, ruling as kings and queens in this magical world, and they got shoved back into World War II England, and they couldn't go back to Narnia. I know this is more about the second movie, but I think one of the most heartbreaking parts of the second movie is when they get back and realize everything is destroyed and it's been hundreds of years, and Lucy says, "Mr. Tumnus and the beavers, they're all gone." Which they don't really talk about in the book necessarily. They don't really delve into the fact of that kind of sorrow that came from it. But I'm gonna have to reread the books. It's been so long since I've read them. And it's just again, I feel like that's what's so cool about this movie is that they made it where you could they made it in such a way that you felt like the whole world was still going on around the one movie,
Right. And I think they do kind of delve into that whole in Prince Caspian, the film, they do delve into the whole like conflict of being an adult and then being treated like a kid again after being an adult for how many amount of time. And like one little bit of a tidbit here is the person who played adult Lucy is actually the actress's real sister.
Oh, really? So, I thought they looked a lot alike.
Yeah, so
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so I thought that was a pretty interesting little tidbit. So, anything else? Any last things you want to talk about the Chronicles of Narnia: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
Oh goodness, I can go on and on about this forever, but it's a wonderful movie with a beautiful story. I think I dare to say that C.S. Lewis would have been pleased with the way it came out. I'm so glad they didn't Americanize it and make it modern. That would have ruined it. I'm so glad that they stuck to the source material and put it in war-torn London. I really liked how they added a little bit more about what was going on with the war. That was interesting. I liked that, how they opened up with the bomb raid and stuff like that. I think it just gave the story so much more heart than it would have if we were just like, oh, we're in California, we found a closet that leads to another world, that sort of thing.
Do you think that would have been if it was like American Chronicles of Narnia?
Yeah, they probably would have been in New York or something.
Yeah, most likely. Did the book start off with a bomb raid?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it did start. I do believe there was a reference to the war because that was the reason the children were going away during World War II. They sent kids away so they'd be safe from the bombing raids that were happening in England.
I think didn't it come out like during World War II, like right when it was happening?
I don't think so. I feel like it happened afterwards.
Let me check. It came out in It came out in 1950, so it came out like 5 years after the war ended.
Yeah, so it was still fresh on people's minds, but it wasn't in the middle of it.
Right. So, and I think also he didn't put that in because since it was so recent, people just would have known that right off the bat that was what was going on. But us looking at it in our 21st century brains, we kind of do need that scene so we can have a little historical context about what is going on in British history. So, yeah, that's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for you. Check it out. It is pretty good. Would you encourage people to check out the other two films?
I would. I think the movies are still good. I would say the next two movies are not as faithful to the books as the first movie is, just content-wise. Spirit-wise, I think they still ring true to like what the books were intending. But yeah, it's definitely not the most, especially Prince Caspian, but I love Prince Caspian. Like, I still love it, even though it's not super faithful to the book. But I think they're movies that are still worth watching because they're good movies. And again, they keep to the spirit of the book. So I think that's what keeps them, being good movies. It makes me sad that they only got to make 3.
Right. Hopefully the series would come out and they'll cover like all of them.
I don't know. Guess we'll just have to wait and see.
We're gonna have to wait and see with our fingers crossed. Hopefully things will be good. So yeah, that's the Chronicles of Narnia. What rating would you give it?
Out of 10, I'd probably give it an 8 or a 9.
Okay, I will give it a 7 because I'm just a crotchety old reviewer.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe. That was a great discussion, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Vision podcast, home of Wacky Talkies, The Kingdom, Evil Exists, and many more.